Never thought I'd say this on our show, but President Trump might be creating a committee in college football, which you can have a lot of opinions on that. The success rate, who knows? It sounds like Nick Saban's going to be a part of that thing and others. The reality is there needs to be governance, because if it's state to state, we've seen all of a sudden there's a lawsuit, moving on. The House settlement, there's an update, Jim, I know you're going to provide with us there. Maybe by the time you listen to this, there's another update in that regard. But what can you tell us about the news that you probably read a little bit more than I do?
Yeah, well, and again, it's hard, and thank you to Ross Dellinger for being the being the reporter who really kind of gets this whole thing better than most of college football media. So it's kind of like internalize, contextualize it for the simpletons like myself who just want to like, how does this actually affect us here instead of trying to figure out all the legalese. But the judge basically told them, hey, we're not moving forward without the roster spots being grandfathered in, based on the roster limits that was coming in. And, as you have spoken about in the past, like coaches and programs are already telling guys like, hey, or guys were already, and this is not just football. This is, throughout many sports. Kids were leaving school because they knew they weren't going to have a roster spot. So now, with the judge saying that, the new proposal that they're apparently going to have is addressing that, which would allow schools to kind of that are opting into the revenue sharing to kind of phase in those roster limits. You've already seen Notre Dame say that if you're already in school and on a roster at the time of the change, the school will honor the player's spot on the roster in the event that cuts to get to the limit. So it's really just kind of chaotic because everyone kind of knows where this needs to go, but it's the path to get there. Now, I have no idea if this, presidential committee is going to help or hurt that process, because it's one of those things where they're at the quote unquote, 1 yard line. We've seen things before when people have said, "Oh, we're at the 1 yard line," and things completely fall apart. So if this comes in and be like, "Oh no, we need to do this," is that going to really just kind of blow up all the progress that's already been made, or will this be the hammer to drive that final nail into getting something done on this? Because there's just a lot of chaos right now, and schools are going to have to, figure out whether or not it's in their best interest to backtrack on all the moves that they've made in the last 6 months to get the rosters where they need to be able to be in compliance with everything. It's just a really crazy time in college sports.
Yeah. Well,
that's the simple way to kind of describe it there.
totally. And like I said off the bat, like time goes fast. We're going to be in 2030 before you know it. Think about it. So by 2028, 2029, we're going to know. By 2027, we're going to know about the expanded playoff. By 2028, 29, you're going to have an idea of, does conference realignment happen again, right? Does it become a huge super league? I think there's always a dialogue around, like, college football's never been healthier. You see that in presentations. You hear that from people. I wouldn't agree with that. I think certain places never been healthier. I think the playoff never made college football more popular, healthier. But when I look at some of these other teams, let's just stay out west. Like, do I think Stanford and Cal are at their healthiest right now because they're in the ACC? Like, zero chance on that. And I would bet they would agree with that, right? So what's going to happen as it all moves forward? Like, what is this governance? Is it focused solely on NIL, pay for play, transfer portal craziness, coaching salaries off the hook? Like, I don't know, like, maybe it's probably not going to put a cap on coaching salaries. So then you're going to put a cap on freshman NIL, which I agree with. I've heard that from many coaches. I think it's a fair thing because now, like, you don't have to feel the pressure to play them, which I don't think is always the best thing. But now let me be an agent for a 5-star quarterback who's going to be at the Elite 11 this summer. You're going to put a cap on me? No, like, you can't do that in fair market value. And then you have to define what is fair market value. That's the biggest issue here in NIL. Of if we all agree on revenue sharing, which sounds like that's going to be the case, then we also have to agree on the policing of what is an NIL legal deal. Coming on Y option is not worth $100,000. Going on, Pat McAfee maybe is. I don't know. If you do that every week, someone's going to have to decide that. And there's going to be, sounds like there's going to be clear repercussions if you are void of that, right? If all of a sudden you pay somebody an astronomical amount for them not doing a lot of work, that player, that program, that coach is going to face fierce penalties. Do we really think that's going to happen? I don't know.
And
Sure.
also, and how, the thing that we've learned over the last several years, and we've talked about this, multiple times on this podcast, is anytime a penalty comes in, the person who's being penalized will then sue the NCAA and they win. So that's the other part of it is unless there's
every time.
Well, not every time, but I mean most all the time. Now we're seeing junior college players now being able having that not count against their eligibility and all that stuff. There's so many things that we're again, I've told the story many times where you've seen Mick Cronin where he was like, tell the kid to sue the NCAA, and he it was and Foley Dante, the Oregon player during the Pac-12 tournament 2 years ago, I guess that is now. Time goes by too fast. But he should sue to play as long as he wants. But it's going to be interesting because when you talk about Nick Saban being kind of part of this committee, Nick Saban's really old school. I mean, are his ideas, are they going to mesh with where everything has gone so far? So that's kind of where I was talking about before. Is that helpful to the progress of everything, or is it a left turn on everything that then will change? Yeah. So how do all these things align? Because I think that's the biggest thing is how is getting alignment on issues.
Yeah, I think look, what Saban always gets praised for, and he should, which is he was able to radically adjust, whether that's schematically, recruiting. Okay, now all of a sudden, now it's legal has become NIL. Always able to adjust. I would highly recommend to whoever's making this call, and I don't think anybody would push back, is get Chris Petersen involved. Get him involved. Get another guy who is dramatically well thought out from a different part of the country, has coached at a mid-major at Boise State to unprecedented heights, took a UW team to the CFP, is dramatically embedded in the game now, obviously in the media as well. I just think it is the wisest thing you can do. I'm not saying he would want to sign up for that. I got to see him over the weekend up in Seattle. Love Chris Petersen, one of my top 3 favorite coaches of all time. Pete Carroll, David Shaw, Chris Petersen, in no particular order. Just love those humans as men. I would just urge him to do it. Because right now what we have is either it seems like sometimes there's inconsistencies, and we don't really know. So let's just look at what's happening at Michigan, Sharon Moore. It sounds like Michigan has said, we want to self-impose a 2-game penalty. Okay, cool. They're trying to get ahead of the NCAA, a move that many teams have done. Arizona State did the same thing, self-imposed, not go to a bowl game. We've seen that's part of the playbook when you know something's coming down. This is all based on the Connor Stallion sign stealing scandal, which I finally watched that movie last week.
Is that the Netflix one?
Yeah, the Netflix one.
Yeah.
Speaking of Netflix, our good friends Taylor Kavanaugh and company at Blue Ox have a film coming out on May 23rd. More on that on social as we get closer. Shout out to them. But my point is that the way that the NCAA has worked in the past is they would assign a committee to a case. A committee, I'm just going to go to my own scab. The committee assigned to the USC Reggie Bush case was a different committee that was assigned to the Rhett Bomar case, which is a different committee clearly assigned to the Connor Stallions case, which is a different committee to the Jim Tressel and the tattoo case with Terrell Pryor. They're all just different committees. So what does that mean? There's different opinions. There's not a Supreme Court of these justices decide. And I think that has led to inconsistencies, pushing back, zero trust to the NCAA from fans, minimal probably from those in major revenue driving sports, specifically college football, because who's driving the bus? Where are the consistencies? And the NCAA knows that. I mean, I'm going to go down to NACDA, which is kind of like the convention for all things college athletics for the second year in a row. I'm going to be a keynote speaker in a couple weeks in Orlando. I did it last year in Las Vegas. It's awesome. It's like the who's who. Everybody's there at every level. It is like the dopest convention for sports I've ever been to. To that point, there's so many layers to college athletics. So when you look at the thing with Michigan or with Saban and Trump and whomever else, like there needs to be, as much as like we can light up the NFL and Roger Goodell, at least there is it seems to be a consistent way in which decisions, penalties, rules are made. Just doesn't feel that way in college football. Just doesn't feel that way.
No. And it's funny too. And I mean, like, again, this is all a reported of what Michigan's going to do. But like, if you're saying, oh, we're going to have him suspended for week 3 and week 4 against Central Michigan and then Nebraska, but not suspended for the Michigan at Oklahoma game in week 2, that almost seems like we're going to tell you what our penalty is. And if I'm the NCAA, I'm like, no. We decide what it's almost like begging for a harsher penalty by saying like, no, like don't worry, NCAA, like we got this. Like, I'm sure, like, I'm oversimplifying, their reaction to this, and they're trying to figure out, the math on this. But just from a PR perspective, that seems like a little like, we're good. We got this.
Yeah, it's. I've always had an issue with penalties with the NCAA, because those that get penalized often aren't the ones that were part of the penalty or reap the benefits of the penalty. I never thought it was really fair that Lane Kiffin and Matt Barkley had to navigate a dramatically reduced roster and still won 10 games and then to deal with it again the next year. Like, I get it. Like, we have kids. You have a penalty. You have to deal with the repercussions of that. There's consequences in life. So it's a bummer for those that rock the maize and blue, because the players are the ones that are going to be without their head coach. So how they navigate that, Michigan, and I mean this with, not tongue in cheek, like they have recent experience on how to navigate this.
Right.
I mean it. Like, and Sharon has been amazing to me. I will say that, like, nothing but a pro. Has is my 1 year really covering this league and going up to Ann Arbor, et cetera. So they'll find their way. They'll navigate their way through it. But let's just say they suspend him for the Nebraska game as reported, or even CMU. And we know the head coach at CMU. He used to coach running backs at Stanford, right? He led Christian McCaffrey. They went to the Panthers. Like, he's a really good coach, and this is a Michigan team that presumptuously is going to be playing a freshman quarterback. So either which way, whether you look at the first 2 or the game 3 and 4, like, I don't look at Michigan now and I'm like, they're going to go be 4-0. Like, there's a real world where they're 2-2. There's a world where they could stub their toe and Central Michigan all of them could surprise you. So we'll see. We'll see how that thing shakes out.
And to your point, Sharon Moore was not the head coach when this happened.
Give him even more. Yeah, exactly. Right.
He was on the staff. He was obviously, a coordinator at the time. But it's just weird that, like, it's a head coach's penalty for something that wasn't on the head coach at the time. Now, I guess it's, trying to figure out, like, well, he was this, who knows what the real story is. Like,
well, I'll just say this. Like, it's the same deal of, like, SC vacated all the wins, right? Like, that was part of it. Is Michigan going to have to do that? And then what does that even mean? Like, nobody doesn't think SC didn't win the national championship and Reggie didn't win the Heisman. Like, you're almost like, where does the NCAA learn from past decisions? Or does it matter? Like, do you do it because it's the right thing to do and you broke the rule and that's the penalty?
And that's how you, quote unquote, stop it from happening the next time, theoretically.